I overheard my daughter-in-law whisper to her lawyer, "I'm only with him for her inheritance. Just wait till she's dead." I stood frozen in the hallway. At the will signing, I sat across from her and calmly said the words that would change everything. But that moment was still 3 weeks away. The afternoon light filtered through my kitchen windows as I prepared David's favorite lemon cookies. Jessica had called that morning, her voice sweet as honey, asking if she could stop by to discuss the upcoming will revision. She'd been so thoughtful lately, constantly checking on my health, organizing my medications, even scheduling my doctor appointments. At 72, having someone care so deeply felt like a blessing I didn't deserve. My hands shook slightly as I measured the flour. The arthritis had been getting worse, and Jessica had noticed immediately. "Margaret, you shouldn't be doing all this work," she'd say, gently taking tasks from my hands. "Let me help you. That's what family is for." Family. The word always made my chest warm when she said it. I'd been making these same cookies for 8 years.
Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching.
Ever since Jessica married my David, she'd won me over instantly with her genuine interest in family recipes and stories about David's childhood. Unlike David's previous girlfriends, Jessica asked about my late husband Robert, wanting to know about our life together, our dreams, our struggles. She made me feel valued, not like the burdensome old woman I sometimes worried I'd become. The timer chimed, pulling me from my thoughts. As I bent to remove the cookies from the oven, I heard Jessica's car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I watched her check her appearance in the rearview mirror, smoothing her auburn hair and refreshing her lipstick. She always looked so put together, so professional. David had done well for himself, marrying someone so accomplished and caring. "Margaret," Jessica's voice rang through the house as she let herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago. "Something smells heavenly." I smiled, arranging the warm cookies on my grandmother's china plate. "Just finished your favorites. Coffee's ready, too." Jessica appeared in the doorway, her arms laden with file folders and a leather briefcase. She looked tired, I noticed, with faint circles under her green eyes. She'd been working so hard lately, between her marketing job and taking care of me. The guilt gnawed at me constantly. At my age, I should be the one taking care of family, not being a burden. "You spoil me, Margaret." She set her papers on the kitchen counter and embraced me warmly. Her perfume was subtle and expensive, the kind of sophisticated scent that reminded me how different our worlds were. "How are you feeling today? Any dizziness from the new medication?" "Much better, actually. Dr. Patterson adjusted the dosage, remember?" "You were right to insist I see him about the dizzy spells." Jessica's smile was radiant. "I just worry about you. Someone needs to keep an eye on your health." She squeezed my hand gently. "David gets so caught up in work, and you know how men are about medical things. They just don't pay attention like women do." It was true. Since Robert's death 5 years ago, David had thrown himself into his engineering firm, working 12-hour days. I understood. Grief affected everyone differently. For David, staying busy was survival. For me, the quiet house felt like a mausoleum some days. "Shall we go over the paperwork while the cookies are still warm?" Jessica suggested, already organizing the documents. "I know legal stuff isn't fun, but it's important to get everything in order, especially with your health concerns lately." My health concerns. The phrase made my stomach flutter with anxiety. The dizzy spells had started 3 months ago, along with periods of confusion that frightened me. Some mornings I'd forget what day it was, or find myself standing in rooms with no memory of why I'd gone there. Dr. Patterson assured me it was normal for someone my age, especially with the stress of managing a large estate alone. "Of course, dear. I appreciate you helping me understand all this legal language." Jessica spread the papers across my kitchen table, pointing to highlighted sections with perfectly manicured nails. "This is just updating your power of attorney and medical directives. Nothing major. And here," she tapped a thick document, "this ensures David inherits everything smoothly, without any tax complications or probate delays." I nodded, though the words swam together slightly. Jessica had explained this before, but my memory wasn't what it used to be. "And this helps David, how exactly?" "Well, The estate tax alone could cost him hundreds of thousands without proper planning. This way, everything transfers cleanly. The house, your investment accounts, Robert's life insurance policy, the lake cottage. David won't have to sell anything to pay taxes. The lake cottage. Robert and I had spent every summer there for 30 years. David had proposed to Jessica on that dock, underneath the same willow tree where Robert had proposed to me decades earlier. The cottage was supposed to stay in the family forever. I'm just grateful David found someone who understands financial planning, I said, watching Jessica's face carefully arrange itself into modest pleasure. I learned a lot from my father before he passed. He always said family takes care of family. She patted my hand. You've been like a mother to me, Margaret. After losing my own parents so young, having you in my life has been such a gift. My throat tightened with emotion. Jessica had been orphaned at 19, putting herself through college and building a successful career entirely alone. Her strength and independence reminded me of myself at that age, before I'd met Robert and settled into the comfortable rhythm of being someone's wife and mother. You've been the daughter I never had, I said softly, meaning every word. Jessica's eyes seemed to glisten. That means everything to me, which is why I want to make sure you're protected and cared for. David loves you, but he doesn't understand the practical details like we do. She was right. David had inherited his father's brilliant analytical mind, but none of his emotional intelligence. Robert had always handled our financial planning, insurance, investments. After he died, I'd felt overwhelmed by the complexity of it all. Having Jessica step in had been a relief. Now, I need to step outside for a quick call with the lawyer, Jessica said, gathering her phone and one of the folders. Just confirming some details about the trust structure. Help yourself to more cookies. I watched through the window as she paced on my back patio, phone pressed to her ear. Her posture was animated, gesturing as she spoke. Such a dedicated young woman, handling all these complicated legal matters for me. David was lucky to have found someone so caring and responsible. The afternoon was growing late, and I felt one of my tired spells coming on. Dr. Patterson had warned that the new medication might cause drowsiness. I decided to rest my eyes for just a moment, letting my head fall back against the kitchen chair. I must have dozed because Jessica's voice seemed to come from very far away. Sharp and urgent, not at all like her usual gentle tone with me. No, I can't wait another 6 months. The old woman's pills are already working, but I need to increase the dosage. She's getting suspicious about the dizzy spells. My eyes snapped open, my heart suddenly racing. Jessica was still on the patio, but closer to the kitchen window now. Her back was to me, phone still pressed to her ear. Listen, I've been playing the devoted daughter-in-law for 8 years. 8 years of pretending to care about her boring stories and her dead husband's fishing trips. I'm only with him for her inheritance. Just wait till she's dead. The words hit me like ice water. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't process what I was hearing. The house alone is worth $2 million, plus all her investments. David has no idea how much she's really worth. Once she's gone, I'll comfort him through his grief, help him through the estate settlement, and then... Jessica laughed. A sound I'd never heard before. Cold and calculating. Well, let's just say David won't be part of my long-term plans either. My hands gripped the edge of the kitchen table so hard my knuckles went white. The woman I'd loved like a daughter, the woman I'd trusted with my most private affairs, was talking about my death like a business transaction. The lawyer says with the new will structure, everything bypasses probate. I'll have access to the accounts within weeks of her death. And David, poor David, will be so grateful for my support during his time of loss. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling. Through the window, I could see Jessica checking her watch, wrapping up the call. Just make sure the papers are ready for next week's signing. Once she signs the new will, everything will be in place. Then it's just a matter of time. The back door opened and Jessica stepped inside, her face immediately transforming back into the loving expression I'd known for years. Sorry about that, Margaret. Just confirming the appointment for next Tuesday. Are you ready to review these documents? I stared at her, this stranger wearing the face of someone I'd trusted completely. My mouth felt dry as sand. Margaret, are you feeling all right? You look pale. I think I need to lie down, I managed to whisper. Of course. Let me help you to your room. This legal stuff can be overwhelming. As Jessica's hand touched my arm, guiding me toward the stairs, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with my age or my medication. The woman who was gently helping me to bed was the same woman who had just discussed accelerating my death. That night, lying in the darkness of my bedroom, I stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of what I'd heard. 8 years of lies, 8 years of performed affection, every birthday card, every gentle touch, every concerned phone call about my health had been part of an elaborate deception. But worse than the betrayal was the realization that I was in real danger. Jessica had mentioned increasing my medication dosage. The dizzy spells, the confusion, the memory problems. What if they weren't natural signs of aging at all? What if Jessica was slowly poisoning me? I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the house made me jump. Every creak of the old floorboards convinced me that Jessica had returned to finish what she'd started. By dawn, I was exhausted, but my mind was crystal clear for the first time in months. The morning light revealed something I hadn't noticed before. On my nightstand sat the weekly pill organizer Jessica had bought for me, each compartment filled with the medications she'd helped me sort just 3 days ago. My hands trembled as I picked it up, studying the small white tablets I'd been taking faithfully every morning. How long had she been poisoning me? The thought made my stomach lurch violently. I dumped the contents into a plastic bag and hid it in my jewelry box. If Jessica was coming by today, she couldn't see that I'd stopped taking them. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out how to protect myself from someone I'd loved and trusted completely. The phone rang at exactly 9 o'clock. Jessica's daily check-in call. "Good morning, Margaret. How are you feeling today?" I gripped the receiver tighter, forcing my voice to sound normal. "A little tired. I think yesterday was overwhelming. I was worried about that. Legal paperwork can be so stressful at our age, as if Jessica at 34 had any understanding of what it meant to be vulnerable and alone at 72. "Why don't I bring lunch today? We can go over any questions about the documents." "That's very thoughtful, but I think I need to rest." There was a pause. "Margaret, you do understand how important it is to get these papers signed, don't you? The lawyer is holding the appointment specifically for us." The slight edge in her voice made my skin crawl. "Of course, dear. Tuesday is fine." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen and forced myself to remember. Really remember. Not the version of events I'd been telling myself, but what had actually happened over the past 8 years. Jessica had appeared in David's life right after Robert's funeral. I'd been so grateful that my grieving son had found someone supportive, someone who encouraged him to call me, to include me in their plans. But now I wondered, had Jessica pushed for that inclusion? Had she wanted to study me, to learn my routines, my weaknesses, my financial situation? The memory hit me like a physical blow. Our third meeting, when Jessica had casually mentioned how difficult it must be to manage such a large estate alone. She'd offered to help, suggesting I might need someone to organize my important papers, to make sure everything was in order, just in case. I'd been touched by her thoughtfulness, but she'd been cataloging my assets from the very beginning. I thought about David's previous girlfriends. Sarah, the teacher who'd never shown much interest in family gatherings. Lisa, the nurse who'd been kind, but always seemed eager to leave after brief visits. Neither had lasted more than a year, but Jessica had made me feel special, important, needed. She'd asked detailed questions about Robert's military service, his pension benefits, his life insurance policies. She'd encouraged me to share stories about our investments, our retirement planning, our decision to buy the lake cottage. I'd thought she was being a good daughter-in-law, learning about the family history. She'd been conducting reconnaissance. The worst part was remembering David during those early months with Jessica. He'd been lighter somehow, less burdened by grief. Jessica had convinced him to take that promotion, to buy the bigger house, to plan for the future. She'd been perfect for him, encouraging his ambitions while staying close to his family, because she'd known exactly what she was after. My phone rang again, David this time. "Hi, Mom. Jessica mentioned you seemed tired yesterday. Everything okay?" I closed my eyes, hearing the genuine concern in my son's voice. David loved me. I'd never doubted that. But he was so busy, so trusting, so completely unaware that his wife was counting down the days until my death. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just the usual aches and pains. Maybe you should consider that assisted living place we looked at last year. The one with the beautiful gardens? You'd have people around, activities, medical staff nearby. Assisted living. I felt cold all over. Did Jessica suggest that?" "Well, she did mention that living alone might not be the safest option anymore, especially with the dizzy spells and memory issues. The fog that had been clouding my thoughts for months, making me doubt my own perceptions, my own judgment. What if that wasn't natural aging at all? What if Jessica had been slowly drugging me into compliance, into confusion, into signing away everything I'd worked for? I'm not ready for that yet. "David, I know, but maybe we should have a family discussion about it soon. Jessica's been worried about you." After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my house and faced the horrible truth. Jessica hadn't just been planning to inherit my money. She'd been systematically isolating me, making me dependent on her, convincing my son that I was becoming incapable of living independently. The assisted living facility wasn't a suggestion. It was the next step in her plan. I walked to my bathroom and studied my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was pale, thin, older than her 72 years. My eyes were slightly unfocused, my hands shaky. I looked exactly like someone who needed to be cared for, someone whose judgment might be questionable. I looked like someone whose death wouldn't be surprising. But underneath that fragile exterior, I could feel something awakening, a strength I hadn't accessed since Robert's death, since I'd started relying on others to manage my life. Jessica had counted on my weakness, my grief, my gratitude for her attention. She'd made a critical error. She'd underestimated me. I found my address book and looked up Dr. Patterson's office number. If Jessica was drugging me, there would be evidence in my blood work. I needed to know exactly what she'd been giving me and how long it had been affecting my system. "Dr. Patterson's office. This is Linda." "Hi, Linda. This is Margaret Wilson. I need to schedule some additional blood tests." "Of course, Mrs. Wilson. Is this related to your recent medication changes?" "Something like that." "And Linda?" "I need to discuss my current prescriptions with Dr. Patterson privately, without my daughter-in-law present." There was a pause. "Certainly. We can schedule that for this afternoon if it's urgent." "It is urgent. Very urgent." As I hung up, I felt a small spark of the woman I used to be. Before grief had made me passive, before loneliness had made me grateful for any attention, before Jessica had slowly convinced me that I was becoming incompetent, I walked to my kitchen window and looked out at the garden Robert and I had planted together. The roses were blooming, the same deep red variety we'd chosen for our 25th anniversary. Robert had always said those roses were survivors, that they'd bloom every year no matter what tried to kill them. Maybe it was time to remember that I was a survivor too. But first, I needed proof, evidence that would convince David, that would protect me, that would expose Jessica for what she really was. I couldn't just accuse her without documentation. David would think his aging mother was becoming paranoid, possibly even delusional. Jessica was coming for lunch tomorrow. She'd expect me to be confused, compliant, ready to sign whatever papers she'd prepared. Instead, she was going to find out that Margaret Wilson wasn't ready to die just yet, and that some family secrets were more dangerous than others. The next morning, I called my old friend Helen. We'd worked together at the insurance company for 20 years before retirement, and she was the only person I trusted completely. When she answered on the second ring, I could hear the concern in her voice immediately. "Margaret? You sound terrible. What's wrong?" "Helen, I need your help with something, and I need you to promise not to think I'm losing my mind." "Honey, I've known you for 30 years. You're the sanest person I know. What's going on?" I told her everything. About Jessica's phone call, about the pills, about my suspicions. Helen listened without interrupting, and when I finished, there was a long silence. "Margaret, this is serious. You need to call the police." "And tell them what? That my daughter-in-law might be giving me the wrong pills? They'll think I'm a paranoid old woman. Jessica's been so careful to build her reputation as the perfect caregiver." "Then what do you want to do?" "I need to gather proof. Real evidence that can't be dismissed or explained away. And I need to change my will without Jessica knowing. Helen was quiet for a moment. My nephew Bradley is an estate attorney. Good one too. Completely trustworthy. Want me to call him? Could you? And Helen, please don't mention this to anyone else. If Jessica finds out, I understand. Bradley's discreet. He's handled some complicated family situations before. That afternoon, Helen picked me up, and we drove to Bradley Morrison's office in downtown. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with his aunt's sharp eyes and no-nonsense manner. Mrs. Wilson, Aunt Helen explained the situation. What you're describing constitutes elder abuse, possibly attempted murder. Have you considered going to the authorities? I've considered it, but I need more evidence. Right now, it's my word against hers, and Jessica's been very careful to appear devoted and caring. Bradley nodded thoughtfully. Let me see your current will. I handed him the documents Jessica had helped me prepare 3 years ago. As he read, his expression grew increasingly troubled. Mrs. Wilson, this will is extremely favorable to your daughter-in-law. She's listed as secondary beneficiary after your son, but there are also provisions that give her significant control over the estate even if your son inherits first. What do you mean? If David predeceases you, or if he's deemed unable to manage the inheritance, Jessica becomes the primary beneficiary. She's also listed as the executor, which means she'd control all financial decisions. My stomach dropped. Jessica suggested those provisions. She said it was just being practical, in case something happened to David. Mrs. Wilson, statistically speaking, it's highly unusual for a daughter-in-law to have this level of control, especially when there are other living relatives. Do you have any siblings? My sister Ruth in Oregon. We're not close, but she's family. Bradley was taking notes rapidly. We can create a new will that revokes all previous versions. But we need to be strategic about timing. If Jessica suspects you're changing the will, she might accelerate whatever timeline she has in mind. The thought made my hands tremble. How long do we have? She mentioned next Tuesday for the will signing. That's 5 days. If we're going to act, it needs to be before then. Helen leaned forward. What about setting a trap? Making Jessica reveal her true intentions? Bradley considered this. It's risky, but it might work. Mrs. Wilson, are you willing to take that risk? I thought about Robert, about how he'd always protected me, about David, who had no idea his wife was planning to inherit everything and then leave him, about the 8 years of lies and manipulation. Yes. What do you need me to do? Bradley explained his plan. It was simple but dangerous. I would pretend to be getting sicker, more confused, more dependent on Jessica. Meanwhile, Bradley would prepare a new will that left everything to charity, with David receiving only a small monthly allowance for life. The key was making Jessica think she was succeeding while secretly documenting her actions. Can you act convincingly confused? Bradley asked. I've been watching Jessica act for 8 years. I think I can manage. That evening, I called Jessica, making my voice weaker than usual. Jessica, dear, I'm having another bad day. I can't remember if I took my evening pills. Oh no, Margaret. I'll be right over. She arrived within 20 minutes, carrying a small bag and wearing her most concerned expression. Let me check your pill organizer, she said, rushing to the kitchen. It looks like you forgot both your evening medications. Here, take these with some water. I palmed the pills instead of swallowing them, pretending to drink while keeping the tablets hidden in my hand. Thank you, dear. I don't know what I'd do without you. That's what family is for. Jessica sat beside me on the couch, her face a mask of sympathy. Margaret, I've been thinking. These memory lapses are getting worse. Maybe we should consider moving up the will signing. You know, just in case. In case of what? Well, if your condition deteriorates, there might be legal complications about your capacity to sign documents. It's better to take care of everything while you're still having good days. Still having good days. As if my mind was already slipping away. That makes sense, I said, forcing confusion into my voice. When should we do it? Tomorrow, if possible. I could call the lawyer tonight. Tomorrow. Jessica was moving faster than Bradley had anticipated. Actually, Jessica, I've been feeling so mixed up lately. Maybe you should just handle everything for me. You understand all the legal language better than I do. Jessica's eyes lit up with something that might have been triumph, quickly hidden behind concern. "Oh, Margaret, I couldn't make those decisions for you. This is your estate, your legacy. But I trust you completely. And if something happens to David, I want to make sure you're taken care of. You've been like a daughter to me." "That's so sweet of you to say." Jessica squeezed my hand, and I fought not to pull away. "Let me call the lawyer and see if we can schedule something for tomorrow afternoon." After Jessica left, I immediately called Bradley's emergency number. "She wants to move the signing to tomorrow," I told him. "She's pushing harder than we expected. I'll have the new will ready by morning. But Margaret, this is escalating quickly. Are you sure you want to continue with this plan?" I looked around my living room, at the photos of Robert, at the life we'd built together that Jessica was systematically dismantling. "I'm sure." "All right. Tomorrow you'll sign 2 documents. The fake will that Jessica expects, which we'll destroy later, and the real will that protects your assets. The lawyer I'm bringing is someone I trust completely. He'll handle the theatrics while I observe from another room. What if Jessica gets suspicious?" "She won't. She's so close to getting what she wants. She won't look too carefully at the details." That night, I barely slept again. I kept thinking about David, wondering if he really was in Dallas or if that was another of Jessica's lies. I thought about calling him. But if he was part of this somehow, or if Jessica had access to his phone, it could ruin everything. Instead, I spent the night flushing the pills Jessica had given me down the toilet and practicing my confused, dependent act in the bathroom mirror. It was horrifying how easily the helpless expression came. How many times had I worn this face for real over the past months, not knowing I was being poisoned? The next morning, Jessica arrived early with coffee and pastries from my favorite bakery. "I thought you might be nervous about today," she said, bustling around my kitchen. "Legal meetings can be overwhelming." "I am nervous," I admitted truthfully. "I keep thinking about Robert, wondering what he would want me to do." "Robert would want you to be practical," Jessica said firmly. "He'd want to know that David and I were taken care of, that his hard work wasn't lost to taxes and legal complications." She was probably right about that. Robert had been practical above all else, but he'd also been fiercely protective of family, and he'd taught me to trust my instincts about people. Right now, my instincts were screaming. "The lawyer will be here at 2, Jessica continued. "I've arranged for a notary as well, so we can get everything finalized today." "Will David be there?" "Oh, he's still in Dallas, remember. But don't worry, he's already given his approval for whatever you decide. He trusts us to handle this." Another lie. David would never approve of major estate decisions without being present. "Jessica," I said carefully, "what happens if something happens to David? I mean, before he inherits?" "Well, with the new will structure, everything would continue to be managed properly. You don't need to worry about those details." Managed by Jessica, she meant. Everything flowing directly to the woman who'd spent 8 years waiting for me to die. At 1:30, I positioned myself in the living room where I could see cars arriving. A black sedan pulled up, and a man in an expensive suit got out, carrying a briefcase. Bradley's associate, no doubt. Jessica immediately went into hostess mode, offering coffee and making small talk about the weather. She was performing again, playing the role of the devoted family member handling difficult responsibilities. But I was performing too now. And unlike Jessica, I was performing for my life. "Shall we begin?" the lawyer asked, spreading documents across my dining room table. "Of course," Jessica said, guiding me to my chair like I was an invalid. "Margaret's having a difficult day, so we should keep this as simple as possible." As I picked up the pen to sign away everything I'd worked for my entire life, I caught a glimpse of Jessica's face. For just a moment, when she thought no one was looking, her mask slipped completely. The expression I saw there was pure, calculated greed, and I realized that tomorrow might be too late to stop her. I signed the documents with shaking hands, partly from genuine fear and partly for show. The lawyer Bradley had sent was professional and thorough, explaining each section while Jessica hovered nearby like a vulture waiting for carrion. "This transfers the primary estate to David Wilson," the lawyer said, pointing to a highlighted section, "and establishes Jessica Morrison as secondary beneficiary and estate executor." Jessica's maiden name. I'd never heard it before. which seemed odd after 8 years. Another small lie in an ocean of deception. "Is there anything else you'd like to add or change, Mrs. Wilson?" the lawyer asked. "No, I think Jessica and David should handle everything. I trust them completely." The words tasted like poison in my mouth, but Jessica's satisfied smile made the performance worthwhile. She thought she'd won. After the lawyer left, Jessica stayed to make sure I was feeling all right after such a stressful afternoon. "I'm so proud of you for handling that so well," she said, tidying up my living room with possessive efficiency. "I know legal matters are confusing, but you made the right decisions." "I hope so. I keep worrying I forgot something important." "Don't worry about details. That's what I'm here for." She fluffed the couch pillows unnecessarily. "Actually, Margaret, I think tonight might be a good time to adjust your evening medication. Dr. Patterson mentioned the new dosage might help with your anxiety." My blood ran cold. She was planning to increase the poison tonight, probably to celebrate securing the inheritance. "That's thoughtful of you, dear, but I'm feeling much calmer now that the will is settled. Maybe we should wait and see how I sleep tonight." Jessica's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Well, if you're sure, but I'll leave the extra pills here just in case you need them later." She placed a small bottle on my kitchen counter, labeled with my name and Dr. Patterson's practice information. It looked completely legitimate, which made it even more terrifying. I should get going. "David's calling tonight, and I want to tell him how well everything went." David was calling, which meant he probably wasn't in Dallas at all. "Give him my love," I said. "Tell him I miss him." "Of course. Get some rest, Margaret. Tomorrow's a new day." After Jessica left, I immediately called Bradley. "It's done," I told him. "She has the fake will, and she left more pills." "Don't touch those pills. I'm sending someone to collect them for testing. How did she seem?" "Triumphant. And she mentioned David calling tonight, which makes me think he's not traveling at all." "That's concerning. If David's local and not responding to calls, Jessica might have told him you're having serious health issues. She could be isolating you from him too." The thought hadn't occurred to me, but it made horrible sense. If David thought I was becoming severely confused or paranoid, he might avoid visiting to spare himself the pain of watching my decline. "Bradley, what if she tries something tonight? She left medication and seemed eager for me to take it. Do you have somewhere safe you can stay?" I thought about Helen, but involving her further felt dangerous. If something happened to me tonight, I didn't want Jessica suspecting Helen knew anything. "I'll be all right. I just won't take anything she left." "Margaret, I'm worried about leaving you alone. What if I stationed someone outside your house?" "No, that might make her suspicious. I can handle one more night." But after I hung up, I wasn't sure that was true. Jessica had seemed different today, more confident, more possessive, like someone who no longer needed to pretend. I spent the evening moving around my house, checking locks and windows. The pill bottle Jessica had left sat on my counter like a venomous snake. I was tempted to flush them down the toilet, but Bradley needed them as evidence. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang. David's number. "Mom, Jessica said you signed your will today. How are you feeling?" His voice sounded strained, worried, not like someone who'd been part of Jessica's plan. "I'm fine, honey. A little tired, but relieved to have everything settled. Jessica mentioned you've been having more memory problems. She thinks maybe we should consider getting you some help around the house." There it was, Jessica poisoning David's perception of me, making him believe I was deteriorating faster than I actually was. "David, are you really in Dallas?" "Dallas? No, I'm at home. Why would you think I was in Dallas?" "Jessica said you were at a conference." There was a pause. "Mom, I haven't traveled for work in months. Jessica knows that." "Are you sure she said Dallas?" My heart started racing. If David was home, why hadn't Jessica mentioned it? Why had she lied about him being out of town? "David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Have you and Jessica discussed my will recently?" "Not really. She mentioned you wanted to update some things, but she said it was just routine stuff. Why? What about my medications? Has Jessica talked to you about managing them?" "She said Dr. Patterson wanted someone to help you keep track of everything, because you've been getting confused about timing." "Mom, Is everything okay? You sound upset. I wanted to tell him everything about the overheard conversation, about the pills, about the 8 years of lies. But if I was wrong, if there was somehow an innocent explanation, I'd destroy David's marriage based on suspicions and circumstantial evidence. I'm just tired, honey. Maybe we could have lunch this week, just the two of us? Of course. I'll call you tomorrow and we'll set something up. After David hung up, I sat in my darkened living room, thinking. Jessica had lied about David being out of town. She'd also lied about him being involved in the will decisions, which meant she was operating independently, without David's knowledge or approval. That should have been reassuring, but instead, it terrified me. If David wasn't part of the plan, he was as much a victim as I was. Jessica was manipulating both of us, planning to inherit everything, and then, according to her phone conversation, eliminate David from her life as well. Around midnight, I heard a car in my driveway. Through my bedroom window, I could see headlights turning off. Someone was parking outside my house. My heart hammered as I heard the sound of my front door opening. The spare key Jessica had been using for years. I lay perfectly still, listening to footsteps moving through my house. They paused in the kitchen, where the pill bottle waited, then continued toward the stairs. Jessica was coming up to my bedroom. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe normally, pretending to be asleep. The bedroom door creaked open, and I felt rather than saw Jessica standing in the doorway. She moved closer to the bed, and I could smell her perfume. The same expensive scent I'd grown to associate with comfort and family. Now it made my stomach turn. "Margaret?" she whispered softly. "Are you awake?" I didn't respond, forcing my breathing to remain deep and even. "I brought you something to help you sleep better," she continued, her voice gentle and caring, the same tone she'd used for 8 years when bringing me tea or adjusting my pillows. I felt the mattress dip as she sat on the edge of my bed. Something clinked softly, like glass against glass. "You've been having such a difficult time lately," Jessica murmured, still in that loving tone. "All this stress about legal documents and finances. You shouldn't have to worry about such things at your age." She was dissolving something in water. I could hear the soft fizzing sound of pills disintegrating. "Just a little something to help you rest. After everything you've been through today, you deserve peaceful sleep." Jessica placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, shaking me softly. "Margaret, I brought you some water and your sleep medication. Dr. Patterson said it's important to take it before bed." I made a sleepy sound and pretended to wake up gradually. "Jessica, what time is it?" "It's late." "But I was worried about you. You seemed so anxious today after signing the will. I thought you might need something to help you sleep." In the dim light, I could see her holding a glass of water with white sediment swirling at the bottom. Much more medication than any doctor would prescribe for sleep. "That's so thoughtful of you, dear." I reached for the glass with trembling hands, bringing it close to my lips. The smell was wrong, bitter and chemical. This wasn't just sleep medication. This was something else entirely. "Drink it all down," Jessica encouraged, her hand on my back in a gesture that once would have felt supportive but now felt threatening. "It will help you sleep peacefully." Peacefully. Forever, she probably meant. I tilted the glass to my lips, pretending to drink while letting the liquid run down my chin onto my nightgown in the darkness. "There's a good girl," Jessica said, taking the empty glass. "You should feel better very soon." She kissed my forehead, a gesture of affection that made my skin crawl. "Sweet dreams, Margaret. Rest well." As Jessica's footsteps faded down the stairs, I lay in my bed, liquid from the poisoned glass still drying on my nightgown, and realized I'd just witnessed my own attempted murder. The woman who'd called me mother for 8 years had just tried to kill me with the same gentle care she'd shown while organizing my medications. Tomorrow, she would expect to find my body. Instead, she was going to discover that I was very much alive, and that I knew exactly who she really was. I waited until dawn before calling Bradley. My hands were steadier than they'd been in months, my mind clearer than it had been since this nightmare began. Nearly dying has a way of focusing your priorities. "She tried to poison me last night. I told him without preamble. Jesus, Margaret, are you all right? Should I call an ambulance? I'm fine. I didn't actually drink it. But we have her now, don't we? She broke into my house and tried to murder me. We need to move fast. She'll expect to find you dead this morning. When you don't answer her calls, she'll panic. Good. Let her panic. I want to confront her while she's off balance. Margaret, that's dangerous. If she realizes you're alive and know everything. Bradley, I'm 72 years old. I've been married, widowed, raised a son, and survived 8 years of slow poisoning. I'm not afraid of a 35-year-old con artist anymore. An hour later, I sat at my kitchen table, fully dressed and alert, when Jessica's key turned in the front door. I'd positioned myself so she'd see me immediately when she entered. Margaret? Her voice carried the perfect note of surprise and concern. You're up early. How did you sleep? She appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face arranged in the mask of caring I'd fallen for countless times. But now I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the quick assessment of my condition. I slept wonderfully, Jessica. Best sleep I've had in months. Her smile faltered slightly. That's wonderful. The medication Dr. Patterson prescribed must be working. Yes, about that medication. I picked up the glass she'd brought me last night, now sitting in evidence bag Bradley had provided. This isn't from Dr. Patterson, is it? Jessica's face went white. For a moment, her careful composure cracked completely. I don't know what you mean. That's just water. Water doesn't leave chemical residue, Jessica. Or should I say, Jessica Morrison. That is your real name, isn't it? Not the name you gave David when you married him. She took a step backward, her eyes darting toward the door, but I wasn't finished. 8 years, I continued, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. 8 years of pretending to love me, love my son, while planning our deaths. Did you really think I was too old and stupid to figure it out? Margaret, you're confused. The medication makes you paranoid sometimes. I heard you on the phone, Jessica, talking to your lawyer about waiting for me to die, about leaving David after you inherited everything, about how you've been playing the devoted daughter-in-law for 8 years. Jessica's mask finally slipped completely. The concerned expression vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. You heard wrong. Did I? Then explain the pills you've been adding to my medication, the ones that made me dizzy and confused, the ones Dr. Patterson never prescribed. You're a paranoid old woman having delusions. Am I? Then explain why you told David you were going out of town when he was home the entire time. Explain why you've been lying about his involvement in the will changes. Explain why you tried to give me enough sedatives last night to kill a horse. Jessica straightened, and for the first time, I saw her real personality emerge. Gone was the sweet, caring facade. In its place stood someone I didn't recognize at all. You want explanations? Fine. You're right about everything. I did marry David for your money. I have been slowly poisoning you. And yes, I tried to kill you last night. The casual admission hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd known it was true. But you made one mistake, Margaret. You survived. And now you know everything, which makes you extremely dangerous to me. What are you going to do? Kill me right here in my kitchen? Jessica smiled, but it wasn't the warm expression I remembered. It was predatory. I don't have to kill you, Margaret. Who's going to believe you? A confused elderly woman making wild accusations against her devoted daughter-in-law? Even David will think you've lost your mind. David will believe me when he sees the evidence. What evidence? Some pills that could have gotten mixed up by accident? A glass that could have had anything in it? Your word against mine? She was right, and we both knew it. Without concrete proof, I was just a confused old woman making accusations. Besides, Jessica continued, settling into the chair across from me like she owned the place, even if David believed you, what would he do? Divorce me? I'd still get half of everything we've built together. And once you're gone, which won't be long given your age and health issues, I'll inherit anyway. Not if I change my will. Jessica laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. With what lawyer? Using what mental capacity? Margaret, after last night's episode, I'm going to have to insist David get you evaluated for dementia. It's clear you're having paranoid delusions and memory problems. For your own safety, You might need to be placed somewhere with professional care. The threat was clear. If I tried to expose her, she'd have me declared incompetent and locked away. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I've had 8 years to plan this, Margaret. 8 years of listening to your boring stories, pretending to care about your dead husband, acting like the perfect daughter-in-law. Do you have any idea how exhausting it's been? The cruelty in her voice was breathtaking. Every shared meal, every conversation about Robert, every moment I'd thought we were bonding as family. It had all been an act. What about David? Do you care about him at all? David's useful. He's stable, predictable, and completely blind to who I really am. But caring about him? No. I stopped caring about anyone but myself a long time ago. He loves you. David loves the idea of me, the version I created for him. Sweet, caring Jessica who adores his mother and wants nothing more than to be part of his family. She stood up, smoothing her clothes. But that Jessica never existed. I sat there, looking at this stranger who'd shared our dinner table for 8 years, and felt something I hadn't experienced since Robert's death. Pure, righteous anger. You made one mistake too, Jessica. What's that? I smiled, feeling calmer than I had in months. You assumed I was as naive as David, that I'd fall for your act completely, but you forgot something important. What? I've been playing a role too. The confused, helpless old woman who needs your care and guidance. The grateful mother-in-law who trusts you completely. I leaned forward. But I stopped being that woman the moment I heard you planning my death. Jessica's confidence wavered slightly. What are you talking about? The will you think you watched me sign yesterday? It's fake. The real will leaves everything to charity. You get nothing. That's impossible. I was there. I watched you sign it. You watched me sign documents. You assumed they were the ones you wanted signed. But Bradley Morrison is an excellent lawyer, and he's very good at making people see what they expect to see. Jessica's face went through several emotions quickly: confusion, disbelief, and finally, rage. You can't do that. That money is mine. I've earned it by poisoning me, by lying to my son, by pretending to love us while planning our deaths. I gave you 8 years of my life. You gave me 8 years of lies, Jessica. And now it's over. She lunged across the table toward me, but before she could reach me, Bradley stepped through the kitchen door with 2 police officers behind him. Jessica Morrison, you're under arrest for attempted murder and elder abuse. As the officers handcuffed her, Jessica looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, Margaret. Yes, I said quietly. It is. 3 months later, I sat in my kitchen drinking real coffee, not the decaf Jessica had been secretly giving me for years. The morning light streamed through windows I'd had cleaned professionally, making everything seem brighter. My hands were steady, my mind clear, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. David knocked on the back door, letting himself in with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged. The past months had been difficult for him, learning the truth about his wife, dealing with the investigation and trial, but he was stronger now, more present than he'd been in years. Morning, Mom. How are you feeling? Better every day, I said, and meant it. Without Jessica's poison in my system, my energy had returned, my memory sharpened, even my arthritis seemed less painful. David poured himself coffee and sat across from me. We'd had many conversations like this since Jessica's arrest, slowly rebuilding our relationship, learning to trust each other again. The prosecution called, he said. Jessica pled guilty to all charges. She'll be sentenced next week. I nodded. Part of me felt sorry for the broken woman who'd sat in that courtroom, all her masks finally stripped away. But mostly I felt relieved that this chapter was finally closing. How long? 15 to 20 years for attempted murder, elder abuse, and fraud. The DA said she might serve 12 with good behavior. And you? How do you feel about it? David was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee thoughtfully, relieved mostly, and grateful that you survived long enough to stop her. The investigation had revealed the full scope of Jessica's deception. Her real name was Jennifer Maddox, and she had a criminal history dating back to her teens. Small-time cons at first, then more sophisticated schemes targeting older victims. David and I were just her most successful long-term project. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, David said. The way she always volunteered to handle your medications, how she discouraged me from visiting when you were having bad days, how she insisted on managing your medical appointments. You couldn't have known. She was very good at what she did, but you figured it out, only because I overheard her phone call. If not for that accident, she might have succeeded. David reached across the table and took my hand. Mom, I owe you an apology. For the past few years, I let work become more important than family. I let Jessica convince me you were being cared for while I focused on everything else. I should have been here more. You're here now. That's what matters. I promise I'll never let anything like this happen again. I squeezed his hand. David, honey, I can take care of myself. I'm not the confused, helpless woman Jessica made me pretend to be. It was true. Over the past months, I'd rediscovered parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. I'd started driving again, something Jessica had gradually discouraged. I'd rejoined my book club and volunteer activities that had somehow fallen by the wayside during the years of subtle poisoning. I'd even started dating, much to David's amusement and slight discomfort. Speaking of taking care of yourself, David said with a grin, Helen mentioned you've been seeing someone. I felt my cheeks warm. His name is Frank. He's a retired teacher from church. We've been having coffee and going to matinee movies. Do I get to meet him? Only if you promise not to interrogate him about his intentions toward your mother. David laughed, and the sound filled my kitchen with warmth. It had been so long since I'd heard him laugh freely. Deal. But I reserve the right to give him the standard protective son speech. After David left for work, I walked through my house, appreciating the changes I'd made. Jessica's subtle influence had been everywhere. The way she'd rearranged furniture to limit my mobility, the medications she'd convinced me I needed, even the thermostat settings that kept me constantly tired and sluggish. Now, the house felt like mine again. I'd moved my favorite reading chair back to the sunny spot by the window. I'd replaced the dim light bulbs Jessica preferred with brighter ones. Small changes, but they'd made an enormous difference in how I felt in my own space. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Dr. Patterson's office. Mrs. Wilson? This is Nancy. Dr. Patterson wanted me to call with your latest test results. Everything looks excellent. Your blood pressure is normal. Your cognitive function tests are perfect, and all the toxic substances have cleared your system completely. Thank you, Nancy. That's wonderful news. The doctor wanted me to tell you that your recovery has been remarkable. He's never seen someone bounce back so completely from medication toxicity. After hanging up, I sat in Robert's old chair and thought about the conversation I'd overheard that started this whole nightmare. Jessica whispering about waiting for me to die, about playing the devoted daughter-in-law for 8 years. She'd been right about one thing. She had given me 8 years of her life. But what she'd never understood was that I'd given her 8 years of mine, too. 8 years of genuine love, trust, and family connection. She'd thrown it all away for money she would never receive. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. Through the window, I could see Frank on my front porch, holding a small bouquet of daisies from his garden. "Hope I'm not too early," he said when I opened the door. "I thought we could walk to the farmer's market before our lunch date." Frank was everything Jessica had pretended to be, genuinely kind, honestly interested in my stories, comfortable with my independence. At 75, he was a recent widower himself, and we'd bonded over the shared experience of rebuilding life after loss. "Perfect timing," I said, accepting the flowers. "Let me grab my purse." As we walked through the neighborhood toward downtown, Frank told me about his latest volunteer project teaching literacy to adults. I shared updates about my book club's charity fundraiser. Simple, real conversations between two people who enjoyed each other's company without ulterior motives. "Margaret," Frank said as we approached the market, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you seem happier every time I see you. More yourself, if that makes sense." It makes perfect sense. I feel like I'm waking up from a very long, confusing dream. A nightmare, more like. Parts of it were. But surviving it taught me something important. What's that? That I'm stronger than I thought I was, that I can trust my instincts, that it's never too late to fight for yourself. Frank squeezed my hand gently. Those are valuable lessons at any age. That evening, as I prepared dinner for myself in my quiet kitchen, I thought about Jessica sitting in her prison cell. Part of me wondered if she felt any remorse, any regret for the genuine love she'd rejected in favor of money and manipulation. But mostly, I didn't think about her at all anymore. Instead, I thought about Frank's laugh over coffee that morning, about David's promise to visit every Sunday for family dinner, about the book club meeting next week and the volunteer work I'd signed up for at the hospital. I thought about the woman I'd become through surviving Jessica's deception, stronger, wiser, more aware of my own worth. At 72, I was starting over again, building new relationships, setting new boundaries, creating new routines that served my happiness rather than someone else's agenda. The house that Jessica had tried to inherit early was mine again, filled with my choices, my schedule, my genuine friends and family. I'd survived 8 years of slow poisoning, attempted murder, and systematic psychological abuse. And I'd won, not through revenge or bitterness, but by refusing to let someone else's darkness diminish my light. As I settled into bed that night, grateful for natural sleep without chemical assistance, I smiled thinking about tomorrow, about the life I was building. Day by day, choice by choice, Jessica had tried to steal my future. Instead, she'd helped me reclaim it.